Okay, grade 8. So now, today we are starting chapter 2. This is lesson 1 of chapter 2. It says, solve equations with rational coefficients. It is on page 111 of your book. Okay? Alright. Like any other chapter, when we start, we have to know the vocabulary that we are going to see. So in this chapter, this is all the vocabulary you need to remember. Okay? Some of this vocabulary you've already seen in grade 7. Okay? And try this. Try this by yourself. Okay? Alright, let's begin. So in this lesson, the vocabulary that we must know is multiplicative inverse and coefficient. Alright. So what is a coefficient? A coefficient is a number. It can be positive, negative, a decimal, a fraction, or a whole number. Okay? So, and the title of the lesson is rational. So that means any rational number can be a coefficient. Okay? Now, what do you do with the coefficient? It is a factor. What do we do with factors? We multiply. So that's why we say a coefficient is a factor of a term that contains a variable. So there must be two things. There must be a number and a variable. And between these two numbers, you should be multiplying them. Okay? So that's why I wrote it is always multiplied to a variable. Okay? Or it tells you how many times a variable is being multiplied. Okay? That is what a coefficient is. So let's look at examples. So over here you can see, this is negative 7/8a. So the coefficient over here is negative 7 out of 8. This is negative 4d. The coefficient here is negative 4. This is negative 62. This is negative 6 and 27/100th e. So the coefficient here is negative 6 and 27/100th e. Okay? This is negative g. The coefficient, if I don't see it, I will write 1. If there is no coefficient, I will write 1. So this is negative 1 multiplied by g. If you don't see the number in front of the letter, you will always put 1. Okay? So the coefficient in this question is negative 1. And here the coefficient is 5 out of 9. Here the coefficient is 1. I don't see it, I write 1. Here the coefficient is 3 and 2/10. And here the coefficient is 14. Okay? Again, I repeat, if I don't see the coefficient, it is there. And what is the number? It is 1. So if your question is negative, then the coefficient is negative 1. If your question is positive, then the coefficient is positive 1. All right. So the second vocabulary we must know is called the multiplicative inverse. So the multiplicative inverse, you have seen its other name before you came to this grade. The other name for multiplicative inverse is called the reciprocal. Okay? It is found when you multiply two numbers and you get 1. We usually use it in fractions. Okay? That is where we usually use the multiplicative inverse. Now, so if you have a number, negative 7 out of 8, the multiplicative inverse of negative 7 out of 8 is negative 8 out of 7. Or if your question was negative 8 out of 7, the multiplicative inverse was negative 7 out of 8. What you do is you just flip the fraction. That is what multiplicative inverse means. Flip the fraction, okay? Or flip your number. Because all numbers are fractions. You can write all numbers as a fraction. If you can write your number as a fraction, then you can flip it, okay? So I want you to think about flipping the fraction. Remember, I didn't say opposite, I said flipping. Those are two different things, okay? So flipping the fraction. Okay? So 4, the multiplicative inverse is 1 out of 4. How do I know? All whole numbers are written with 1 at the denominator. So if I want to flip this, it will become 1 out of 4. So 4 over 1 is the multiplicative inverse of 1 over 4. And 1 over 4 is the multiplicative inverse of 4 over 1. Okay? The same thing here. I had 100 out of 6. I flipped it. I got 6 out of 100. Okay? When I multiply these two numbers, I should get 1. Okay? How do I know? So, negative 7 out of 8. If I multiply with negative 8 out of 7, this becomes what? Negative 56 out of negative 56. I'm dividing the same number. My answer is 1. The same thing here. If I do 4 over 1 multiplied by 1 over 4, I get 4 over 4. 4 divided 4 is 1. Let's do that one. So I have 100 over 6 multiplied by 6 over 100. I get 600 over 600. Remember when we learned in grade 7 how to multiply fractions? Multiply straight across. 100 times 6, 600. 6 times 100, 600. 600 divided by 600 equals 1. So that is why we are calling them multiplicative inverse, because when we multiplied them, we got 1. Okay? Now here is a question. Describe how a multiplicative inverse is used in division of fractions. When you're dividing fractions, we always multiply the first fraction with the multiplicative inverse of the second fraction. Of the second fraction. You have two fractions you're dividing. You don't touch the first one. You multiply with the flip of the second one. So let us look over here. So I have 20 divide 1/5. I find the multiplicative inverse of 1/5 by flipping. If I flip 1/5, I get 5 out of 1. And then I multiply, I will get 100 out of 1. My answer is 100. You always flip the second fraction. The same thing here. So when we says multiplicative, inverse. Multiplicative means you're multiplying. Inverse means you inverse, you flip the second fraction. So 2 out of 10, and then you flip it, you get 10 out of 2. And there, 4 times 10 is 40, 8 times 2 is 16. Then you convert this improper fraction to a mixed number. How many 16s are in 40? 2. How do I know 40 minus 16 is 24? I can remove another 16 and I will get 8. So I have 2 16s removed, so that's my whole. 8 is remaining, that's my numerator, and my denominator is 16. Then I simplify my proper fraction. The common factor of 8 and 16 is 8, and that's how I got 2 1/2. Okay? So now, let us look how we are going to solve equations with fraction coefficients. So, I want you to use a different color. You need to have 2 colored pencils, your pencil and a different colored pencil when you're doing this activity. So now, here, we read this as 1/8 multiplied by m equals to 72. So I'm going to start by writing the multiplicative inverse of my coefficient, which is 8/1. And then I have to write my bridge. And then I have to write whatever I have written as the multiplicative inverse, I have to repeat it on this side of the bridge. And then I just bring down my question. You multiply with 1/8. This is my question. Yes. There's an equal sign. And you multiply with 72. Just like that. Now, we know that a number multiplied by its multiplicative inverse is just 1. So you cross your box and you write 1. You cross your box and you write 1. Just like that. So this box is crossed. You're left with m equals. Then you multiply 8 with 72. That is 1657. 576 is your answer. Then you must check. Remember, we did this in grade 7. Whenever you're solving an equation, you must check. So when checking, you write your question, 1/8, and your variable, you put it in the bracket, equals to 72. And then you do 1/8. What is m? I know m from here, 576 equals to 72. Okay? And then I can check with my calculator. I do 1/8 multiply by 576, and I get 72. So I say 72 equals to 72. The last step of your check must be the same number, because you're solving each side by itself. In your check, you must put the bracket. The bracket is only put in the check, not in the question, in the check. Okay? So, again, I look over here, I draw my bridge, I write my multiplicative inverse, 6/5, and on this side, multiply by 6/5. Then I write my question down, multiply by 5/6z, and here multiplied by 24 from the question. This becomes 1, so I cross it out, and then I get z, and then I do this, 24 multiplied by 6/5, so 24 multiplied by 6 out of 24 multiplied by 6 out of 5 is equal to 144/5. Is equal to 144/5. Okay, you can leave your answer like this. You can simplify. You have to simplify. So we continue. Z equals how many 140? How many 5s go into 144? So I do my long division. 144 divide 5. 5 goes here 2 times to give me 10. I get 44. I get 5 goes here 8 times to give me 40. I minus, I get 4. So my answer is 20.